I'd now like to introduce our next speaker, Brendan Ford. Brendan works for the Mooroolbar City Council as an administrative assistant in the health department. Brendan also has been active within disability politics. In this presentation, Brendan will share his journey to find a job.
Hello to you all. A friend at school blinded me when I was 13. I'm now 50, and I'll work through bits and pieces of that 37 years through this talk. I was standing up in a classroom answering a question, and the guy next to me, who was a friend, held out a pencil, and I sat down and it jammed between me and the desk. It stuck into my leg just below my buttock. So the first thing I know about it is my subconscious is going, I've got to get out of here. And I was trying to stand up. Then the next sensation was of sandpaper as Damon pulled the pencil out of my leg. I looked down and there was thick blood on the seat. I thought, I've got to get out of here. So on and so forth. I walked home. There was a bit of kerfuffle because the teacher followed me out of the classroom and said, what's going on, blah, blah. I walked home. The next morning, I woke up in a lot of pain. Went to the doctors and they gave me like an anti-inflammatory type thing for a pulled muscle. And on this went for another few days. I got sicker and sicker. My retina started detaching. I could see blotches of paint in front of my eyes. And the night before the pencil incident, I got hit in the hip with a cricket ball at cricket practice. So my hip was inflamed, and the germ that got into my blood system out of the wood, a streptococci septicemia, was eating away my hip joint. About 4 days later, going forward and back to doctors and howling all night and driving my brothers out of the bedroom and my grandfather sitting there night after night with me. Dad helped me into a bath and I was going off to the infectious diseases hospital, and I thought, oh no, I'm going to get in trouble here for weeing in the bath. I couldn't stop it, but it was blood. And this was the situation I was in. I got into Fairfield. I was there for about an hour, and no one was believing me. And I had a cardiac arrest, and the next thing was I came out of, like a coma, pulling oxygen out of my nose, and I was blind. And I spent another 5 months in Fairfield. The disease ate away my hip joint, and so it was bone on bone, and I was blind. 3 days after I went back, after I got out of hospital, after 5 months, I went back to school with a tape recorder and a bag of pills and a wheelchair. That was the integration process. There was no counselling. I was probably too bewildered for counselling, but anyway, I went on and more or less finished secondary school. As I went through, the pain was getting worse and worse, but because I was so young, they said, keep holding off. till you get older. I left school, I had an emotional breakdown. I hadn't discussed any of this stuff or what I felt. I didn't know what I felt, really, not like in any depth. I knew I felt lonely, I felt sad, I felt that I couldn't do what everyone was asking me to do, but unfortunately I was clever enough to survive. So I ended up at that point with chronic pain, the rest of my joints ache, blindness, and then depression. Depression on its own, I would rather put up with the other two and not have depression if I could get rid of one of those three things. I was in no way prepared for work. I didn't know what to do. There was no support. I felt absolutely shit-house about myself. In the early days, everyone was encouraging. And honestly, you know, getting into the struggle with me. And it was through the love of my family, my brothers and sisters and my parents, that I kind of sustained a level of happiness. But my body was just, I just couldn't cope with it all. I had a couple of operations where they broke my leg. None of those worked. Because they didn't work, I blamed myself. I said, there's something wrong. I'm doing something wrong here. At the end of the second, in between the two operations, I started a degree in recreation. So I did 2 years of a degree. Still in that physical setup. I was allergic through the blood poisoning tenure medication. So I now self-medicated with dope and alcohol. I drank a lot of coffee to keep myself revved. Then I went back, I deferred. They put a plastic hip in because the second time they broke my leg, it didn't work, and I just, that time, threw my hands up and I said, no, I've had enough, I can't do this anymore. And the surgeon finally listened. They put an artificial hip in. But a lot of sort of damage had already been done to my psychology. I had terrible psychology, quite cynical, probably worse than cynical. My health was bad. A lot of this stuff would have been avoided with today's kind of approach, but that's not in the 70s, early 80s. I got a bit of work in policy development, but like at school, I'm constantly getting tormented by print, trying to understand print and get that into my head. And the kind of frustration of knowing everything I needed to know was on these crappy bits of paper everywhere. I then went off to, look, I've blabbed on a bit, I better speed this up. I went to America, I did piano tuning. My body couldn't deal with it. I lived there for 2 years. I tried to work away at that. Work was always difficult, like a little bit of work, 6 months work at Harvey Bay doing access tourism. I got another bit of work doing policy development. Nothing secure. I got into volunteering. When I got into volunteering, I was determined to do the best at volunteering. Through volunteering, I got to be on committees out in the eastern suburbs. This lady said to me one day, and now I'm up to, you know, in my 40s, I never had a secure job. just working out day by day, getting driven mad by having to, what am I going to do today? What am I going to do tomorrow? Trying to think about just this moment and live in this moment. Eventually this good lady said, do you want a job? I said, I would love a job, but don't set me up to fail. She organised for me to get a job in public health at Maroondah City Council. They spent 12 months looking for this job for me after I'd said, don't set me up to fail, it'll kill me. This job, this is, like 47, 48, I'm working into my first part-time secure job. It changed my life. It made me feel like I believed I could feel if I got the right breaks, if something happened or I met someone or they knew someone. I knew this was possible, but it hadn't happened for me for all my efforts. I get paid for 8 hours. I work 16 to 20 because I love being there. I have all these new people. They get inspired by me. I'm inspired by them. It's not that either of us have anything special to offer. It's the human interaction. It's that interface of they want me to succeed and I want to succeed. And I'm so lucky that I'm there. The extra $200 a week has put me from poverty, on poverty line, to have the humiliation of having to borrow money from people to pay bills, to pay food, to get through, to now, for me, I'm on Easy Street. I live by myself in a 1-bedroom unit. I can buy CDs, I can buy food, I can buy new clothes, I can jump in a cab to visit friends. I go in, one friend in Carlton, I get the cab in, we go down to the farmer's market, we get fruit and veggies, and we go over to Ceres and potter around there and have a great vegan lunch. I wouldn't have believed that paid employment could change my life so much. I thought I was so kind of, I don't know, not negative, but just disbelieving. There's a dignity. It's given me the chance to nurture my dignity back into balance and into health. Like, if someone had said to me, stand up and talk in front of these people and say something, I thought, no, I couldn't say anything positive. I could slag off the professions and the yuppies and how lots of them get paid for achieving very little goals. I could question and challenge, but now I actually think good things about people and places. I rang a friend the other day and I said to him, look, if I pay for your airfares, will you come to northern New South Wales with me to the rainforest? I just want to hang out in the peace and quiet, and I can't do it on my own. And he said, yep, I'll clear it with the wife, and I reckon that's all right. Now, that's the kind of experience and valuable experience and quality of life I can have by accessing money. How's the time going there, Joe? Is that it, is it? I'm trying to think of something to sum up that disability, everyone here with disability or knows disability, folks and siblings, it's bloody lonely, it's isolating, and emotional pain can be, is as bad as physical pain. And being able to get up every day, and I bounce out of bed and I go, yeah, this is a work day. And I go to be around people, to laugh, to learn, and I guess a chance to develop myself. So, thank you.
you, Brendan, for sharing your story with us. I'm glad after all these years you have a job. Does anyone have any questions for Brendan?
Hi, Brendan. Just wanted to know what the process was that that ended up with the job at Maroondah Council.
The process was networking. A friend rang up and he said, look, there's a disability awareness program going on at Whitehorse Council. I was shockingly depressed. Like I had been admitted a couple of times to hospital. I woke up in hospital because I'd taken overdoses. That's how bad I was. And he said there's some work there. It took me a while. I rang them. I got involved. They were a lovely group of community development people, and I helped the guys get their talks together. Then they asked me to be on the Disability Advisory Committee. I go, yeah, this is great. I'm just looking for anything to get me out of my head, get out of home and be around people and drag my thoughts away from these terrible ones into the present and being in the here and now. Then Steph from the DAC introduced me to another lady who was in my actual council, and I would ring her every 2 months and get a cup of coffee. You know, I was trying to catch up. I was trying to link with people that were in disability. Then she said, would you go on the community advisory group, representative group, sorry, as a citizen and as disability advocacy? I go, yeah, sure, another thing, you know, this will get me out. Being around interesting people talking and stuff like that. And that's how I met Briar, who after a year and a half looked around at work and said, we don't employ any disabled people here at all. And she made that comment to me, and then in the background she was going around finding work. So the process is getting involved with the community. In my circumstance, I ended up on about 4 committees: safety committees, redevelopment committees, blah, 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 blah. And getting involved, meeting people, picking up your self-esteem, adapting your psychology and your intellect to fit in with what's going on around you, learn about it, learn how people act in meetings and what results what actions they come up with. That's the process. Getting yourself in front of people, not in a sort of one-off showbag interview, but developing some kind of link, emotional link with someone, so they get a sense of feeling who you are and maybe you've got something to offer.
Is there any opportunity for you to increase your work hours, or are you happy with what you've got at the moment?
Yep, there is. There's a chance. Unfortunately, my goddamn body is struggling, and I'm learning how to get the most out of it. And that's like getting up at 5:30 in the morning and going for a 5K walk and getting myself in shape and all the diet and all those kind of things. But while I'm there, I see around the office, I go, oh, I could do that. I could do that. How would I learn to do that? And then I go to my team leader and I say, I want to do the minutes for the meetings. And she goes, yeah, sure. So I go about learning how to do minutes. I was a bit more impatient at the beginning of, getting on with it and thinking, 8 hours isn't enough. But my feel-good things are so revving in me now, I don't care less. I just get in there and whatever. I do work, and I've got enough money to live a quality life. Any more is going to be icing.
Thank you.
Hi Brendan, I was just wondering, were there any adaptations made to your workstation, or do you use technology to help you do your job?
Sometimes I think my life is an adaptation. It's I use screen readers is the generic name, and they make the computer talk. I've got a recorder that has a voice program on it, so that I can use that to record the meetings. I use a Bluetooth earpiece because I've got to have my hands free to type when there's a message comes in. Yeah, there's a few other things that there's a text-to-speech where I can scan documents. The technology that's around actually has opened up a lot of opportunities for blind people, and in the background you've just got to somehow get this gear and learn how to use it and get good at it. There's a lot of it around.
Thanks, Brendan.
Good on yous.